Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to Be Simply Fit, the podcast where we break down health and fitness into simple, sustainable steps. I'm Jim Burns, your host, and I'm also your guide to feeling stronger, moving better, and living your healthiest life without being overwhelmed. Now, each week we dive into expert advice, real-life strategies, and inspiring stories to help you build a lifestyle that fits you. Whether you're just starting out or looking to level up, you're in the right place. So take a deep breath and get ready to move forward, and let's all be simply fit together. Now, today we're doing an interview. I happen to have Dave Amerland with me. He's an author. He's authored several books on more involved with SEO, Google algorithms, and so on. But he's also heavily involved with trying to prevent stress in a person's life. And Dave is quite the athlete. He's a martial artist. He is a second-degree black belt, so you don't want to mess with him. He is a black belt in Wado Ryu Karate. He'll have to explain that one to us. But there's so much that he's done. I'm going to let him just give us a better idea of who he is. So it's without further ado that I am pleased to have Dave Amerland on the show. Dave, welcome to the show. It's just a thrill to see you and have you here.
Thank you so much. It's actually a pleasure to be here. And thank you for that intro as well. And it's always difficult explaining what we are and who we are because most people are comfortable with a one or two dimensional approach. And we are very complex always. We're multidimensional beings. We do a lot of things in our lives. And I'm no exception to that.
Mm-hmm.
I've started my career working in business at a high level as an executive to begin with, and later on as a consultant. And my books reflect that. I started with search and online marketing and digital marketing, and then we went on decision making, and then on to fitness. But throughout that body of writing, and I've written about 18 books now. The connective thread has always been the same. We are people doing things. Our behavior has an impact on ourselves. It has a cost, and also it has a cost on those around us. And I've always tried in what I've put together to optimize that approach so the cost to us is mitigated. If you're working on a business, for instance, it's easy to think that if I pour myself into it, burn the candle at both ends, work every single hour that there is, forget about me and just make the business successful, you might actually get there. But the cost of that is going to be your health. And, we have so many tales now of people who have sort of built up a business, worked incredibly hard, and then their health has suffered.
Mm-hmm.
And the flip side of that is that if you're not healthy to begin with, you can't do it. Mm-hmm. So we can all agree logically that being fit, being healthy in who we are, having the strength of body and mind to actually work at an optimal level is fundamental to success in business and in life and in ourselves. So that brings us to my latest book, I suppose, which is called Built to Last, where the approach basically is, if we were to basically make our life last as long as possible, what would we need in that kind of timeline in order to be healthy, in order to be happy? And what would we need is something which is both sustaining and sustainable. And these are two concepts which go hand in hand. If we don't engage in things which are sustainable, which means that we can actually do them for a long period of time without an incredible cost to us, we're not likely to engage in them for a long time. And that's fitness in itself. And if those things are not sustaining, if they don't make us stronger, if they don't make us fitter, if they don't make us smarter, if they don't help our internal world grow and build, because the truth is you can't really change on the outside if you don't begin to change on the inside. Those two things go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't do those things, then, the whatever you plan to do doesn't really have a future.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you talk about things that you have to sustain and doing things that are sustainable. I mean, of course, that's a key word. My key word has always been consistency. You have to be able to do things day after day, and it doesn't have to be the same thing, but it has to be in the same category. It has to either be physical, mental, emotional. You can't do everything all at the one time, but you got to do things consistently. And when I was speaking to my surgeon after the surgery, after I had quadruple bypass surgery, he came to me and he said, "You're going to live another 20 years." He said, "Because every artery that we used was perfect and your heart was in remarkable shape," because he knew what I was doing. It's a long story, but I trained for it. And he said, it was the exercise.
Mm.
That was just
Yes.
parting words to me. That was just parting. It's the exercise. And I believe that exercise can mitigate a lot of stuff.
Mm.
It really can. But you are involved with something that it gets spoken about all the time, but I don't think that anyone has a clear, like like a formula to try and
Mm.
stop it, and that's stress reduction.
Yes.
That's your biggest thing, and stress plays a tremendous role in, I guess, two ways. It can help us or hurt us. That's for sure.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
what are some of the ways that stress can have a positive impact on our life?
Okay, that's a brilliant question. A lot of people associate stress immediately with a negative effect.
Before you go any
And
further,
yeah.
I just want to let the audience know that, yes, that was a brilliant question. You wrote it. You wrote the question. So the brilliance goes your way, not
Oh, thank
mine. So
you.
thank you for writing that question. Okay, go
We
ahead.
associate we associate stress with a negative effect immediately, and this is not always the case. I mean, we need stress in order to survive. The moment we wake up in the morning, for instance, our body releases cortisol. Cortisol brings up the body temperature, heart rate goes up, respiratory rhythms go up. We begin to get ready for the day. That's stress. Now, without that, we wouldn't be able to function. We'd stay in bed. We'd be unwilling to get out of bed.
Mhm.
States of depression are associated with reduced cortisol levels in the morning, where you
Mhm.
just don't want to get out of bed and face the day.
Mhm.
So stress has a lot of beneficial effects. If you're in a fight or flight situation, you're facing a tiger, it's uncaged, and you need to run for your life, stress actually helps your body perform at such a high level of physical performance that allows you to survive that situation. So we need that kind of stress. At the same time, stress has very specific effects on our body. It produces an inflammatory response. It produces toxic neurochemicals, which basically affect our organs, including our brain. It changes the way the brain allocates energy. And I'll give you an example. If you're in that fight or flight situation, the higher sections of the brain, which are engaged in analytical thinking, shut down because energetically they're too expensive and right now they're useless. You cannot debate the existence of the tiger or how it got there or whatever. What you need to do is deal with that situation, and our body and brain are designed to help us survive. So they shut down those centers and they focus on centers which basically will help us take action, which will lead to a positive outcome for us, which is
Mhm.
survival.
Mhm.
So all this is governed by the stress response. But in the modern world, in most cases, we don't face fight or flight situations, but we do face escalating stress. And most of it comes from our own expectations, our own sort of perception of how we are being judged by the external world. We receive those signals, we sort of internalize them, and then we throw them back at ourselves and we begin to become stressed. And when that happens, when we lose, again, the ability to think analytically, Then we are caught in a cycle of fight or flight response in the body, which doesn't go anywhere because we can't flee and we can't fight. So we tend to absorb that, and that basically leads to chronic stress, which leads to illness. We have high blood pressure. The moment we have elevated cortisol for any length of time, our arteries are affected, our diet is affected, the liver basically absorbs higher levels of fat from the food we ingest. So all those things are negative. And as those negative effects accumulate over time, we're caught in a cycle where we now need to self-medicate in order to escape some of the uncomfortable positions or uncomfortable sort of states where we find ourselves in. And usually self-medication takes us down self-destructive paths. We either engage in excess alcohol consumption, or we overeat of the wrong foods, particularly foods that have higher amounts of fat or higher amounts of sugar, or we tend to go down even worse self-medication paths. We take some kind of drugs to relieve that moment. And then those have their own consequences further down the line, which then don't lead to very positive outcomes for us. So having that knowledge inside ourselves of how stress affects us usually puts us in a very good position to take mitigating action, which will help us relieve that stress in a way that we can channel it, we can decompress, we can basically reduce the effect it has on us. And some of those actions are very basic, like learning to breathe properly, for instance. And others have a longer term sort of planning and effect, like taking some kind of exercise.
I think if I took anything away from what you just said, it would be that the primary responsibility of the brain is survival of its owner.
Yes.
That
absolutely.
So, and I've often because I'm a college instructor and I teach a course in brain compatible methods in the classroom.
Okay.
And one of the things that we've often spoke about is kids who live in the fight or flight mentality. And we've had this discussion is why aren't they learning? Well, because they're always in survival mode.
Yes.
So the higher order thinking is just not happening. Okay, they're down here. And I've always been a big believer because from an evolutionary standpoint, the reason that I exercise the way that I do, and you could chime in on this, is because I believe that we were designed like from the catch and carry mentality. We had to run to catch our food, then we had to carry it back to the cave, or we had to run away from what we were chasing because now it's chasing us. So we were always in that fight or flight mentality. We had to survive, so we had to catch food. So I find what you're saying to be just, so apropos to the some of the things that I've learned over the years.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought in our past evolutionary path. We know, the closest we can come to how we lived during the Stone Age, for example, is by having anthropologists today do field work on tribes which are still hunter-gatherers, and they haven't really come into contact with civilization in any meaningful way. And what we see from that is, first of all, for sure, they're very active. They walk long distances, they do things every day, but they don't exert themselves to a high intense level every single day. We know that they have built-in periods of rest. We know they have built-in periods of socialization where they gather around and they talk, or they go and meet friends, or they'll walk maybe 5 or 6 miles to another village simply because that's how they're going to talk to somebody who lives there, and that's what they want to do that day. So we see in the pattern of their life constant activity at a relatively low level of intensity, and then that is peppered with intense bouts of perhaps hunting for a day or two, or digging for something for a day or two, and then taking a break and resting for a day. And we realize that this is a very sustainable approach to living off the land,
right?
Because it actually allows us to survive, which is the brain's primary directive by doing the one thing which enables survival, which is conserving energy. So if we think that, hunter-gatherers are going to start the day by running 10 miles, and then, they're going to go and hunt, and they're going to come back, they're going to prepare their food, so again, they're being active, none of that happens. Not the way that we sort of are conditioned to expect through whatever films we absorbed or whatever popular culture has given us. So we need to think that basically we have only so much energy each day. The only way that we can survive each day, which then adds up to months, years, and a long life, is by effectively managing that energy. In the modern world, the physical fitness, which we see in terms of bigger muscles and sleeker bodies, that's part of that energy management system. If you go and lift a weight and you lift it for, it's heavy and you lift it 10, 20 times every day, in the beginning, it's energetically costly. And then your body apportions a certain amount of energy, which wasn't sure it was going to, but now it sees that you need it, and you build bigger muscles. And then what happens? Okay, you look stronger, but also you lift that weight at a much lower energetic cost to you, which is what basically we see as the visible aspect of fitness. But inside us, it's easier. It's energetically more manageable. And from a mental perspective, it doesn't daunt us anymore. So all those things happen in order to better manage our energy system, which leads to that survival. And when we take that into the modern world, this is where things go wrong. Because this innate need to take breaks and do nothing for a day, that can sort of trip us up. Because we don't have to move, so we don't. And if we can get used to not moving, then thinking about moving becomes difficult. And then we have to basically scale the mental block we've created because we think now it's going to be difficult. Walking 5 kilometers or walking 2 kilometers now becomes a mountain instead of something which we can casually do. So it takes a lot of thinking for us in the modern world to create a kind of lifestyle where in our everyday life, not only do we exercise in a way that is sustainable because it's good for us, but also and able to sort of do it in the long term, but also in a way that actually benefits us. It fits in with our life. We tend to make our life fit into some kind of fitness ideal, which is difficult, instead of making fitness fit our life. And that's a different, flipping it gives us a different approach.
It's really not an event, it's a lifestyle. That's what exercise should be. It just, in other words, if you're going to do nothing throughout the day and you have to go, I shared a very brief story, and that was when I was a young boy, my mother would say to me, "We're going to the grocery store." And we'd go to the grocery store and I'd probably walk for 2 hours in the grocery store. Now, and this probably had a lot to do with COVID. Okay, you go on your phone, you put in what you want, and you go to the parking spot and you pick up your groceries. You don't even have to go in and shop for them anymore. And all of that was more of, from an evolutionary standpoint, that was more of the catch and carry mentality. In other words, we had to walk to pick our stuff up off the shelf. We didn't have to kill a tiger. We were able to just go get our stuff, and then we would carry it home, in our arms or in the carriage of the car, then into the house, unpack everything. All of that was energy that we used. And the bottom line is those are the things that we don't do anymore that become part of a healthy lifestyle that builds exercise and movement into it. So I found that to be very interesting.
That's right. And I'm so glad you sort of mentioned all this, because essentially, if we take the approach that we have a largely sedentary lifestyle where we don't move at all during the day, and we tell ourselves, okay, I'm committed to my fitness. I'm going to train for an hour a day, every day, which is admirable. And it is definitely better than doing nothing at all. And a lot of people can actually manage that with a little bit of help and a little bit of restructuring their life. But even that is not enough. It's not enough to undo the damage that not moving for the rest of the day actually does. So if we're thinking, well, how do I remain healthy? Then I can't commit because life is difficult and it's complex and we all have mortgages to pay and jobs to keep. How do I then train smarter? And training smarter doesn't necessarily mean training harder. It means taking exactly the approach that you basically just showed us. We factor in daily activity into our day that is part of our life. So if you're going to a meeting, for example, and you park your car a little bit further away, if you take the stairs instead of taking the elevator, if you carry your groceries and you say, I'm going to walk to the supermarket and then I'm going to walk back. If you get into the habit of basically tracking your steps every day, so you're trying to get a minimum of 10,000 steps, and whatever is achievable for you, and you actually do that every day, well, those little things individually don't change you physically at a visible level, which you can see every day, but they will change you physically at a level you can see and observe and feel over the course of a month, a year, 2 years, your lifetime. They make you more capable in your body, and they also affect your brain. I mean, the cells of the brain are not significantly different in their structural sort of makeup than the cells of the body. They still use ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, as fuel. They need that. If we get stressed, for example, because there's a bill to pay, which we can't afford to pay, we're still struggling how to actually solve that puzzle. We're burning up energy, which would have been used for physical exercise. It's a fact that if you're stressed and you try and exercise, you can't. You're exhausted. Your body only has so much energy to allocate each day. So essentially, by factoring in movement in our daily life, which is feasible for us, it's easy for us to do, we're lowering the entrance bar, entrance threshold. We're lowering the bar in terms of what it is that we actually need to do. And when we do that, a lot of things change gradually. We become more comfortable in our body. We become more comfortable in our mind. Our own identity changes. We begin to understand better who we are and what we want. So we achieve a kind of mental clarity that's built out of basic physical fitness, which is amazing.
I love your approach, and in the fitness industry, and you're aware of it, they have a term. It's called NEAT, NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenic. What you're burning just by doing housework, things like that, and that's no one considers that, but that's equally as important as going to the gyms at certain times, I'm sure. Let me ask you.
Before you go any further, just because you brought up doing housework. This is how important it is to actually have the awareness of what we do. And this is a study I came across from, I think it was Stanford University, that looked at how people's perceptions change the way their bodies move. They essentially went to a hotel and took 2 groups of maids, and those maids do very specific things each day in terms of cleaning the rooms and cleaning the corridors, etc. And they used one group as their test group. They used the other group as their control group. The control group were told, we're going to study you for about 6 weeks. We're trying to just understand what it is you do. And the test group, they told them, listen, we're going to follow you for 6 weeks because we understand that what you're doing actually helps your fitness. And they gave them that kind of awareness. They measured their baseline fitness for both groups before they started, and then they measured them at the end of 6 weeks. And now here's the interesting bit. Both groups did the same thing. The group that thought they were just doing work showed no differences, no changes in the baseline fitness. But the group that actually were told that what you're doing counts in terms of how it affects your fitness increased their baseline fitness markers by 13%.
Wow.
And the only thing that changed was that kind of awareness. So if we sort of blindly going through our day, thinking how hard life is, and it's hard for everybody, physical activity for sure helps us, but not as much as if we're present in the moment, actually thinking, okay, I'm walking to my meeting, I'm walking to the supermarket, I'm going to carry the groceries back, but at the same time, this is making me stronger, both physically and mentally. And if we have the kind of awareness, for a number of reasons for which we have theories, but no hard, solid evidence, the brain helps the body become fitter.
I've always been a believer in, I know what I'm doing, and I tried to teach my kids this, but I think we have to be aware of the why we're doing it.
Yes.
In other words, carrying those groceries, I'm getting stronger. We have to be aware that that's really benefiting us from a physical standpoint. And, you know, the younger generation, they I call them gym goers, couch potatoes, because they would be the people that would go to the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning, work out for 45 minutes, and then they have a very sedentary life after that. And that's basically, you get your exercise, but I don't see that as overall health. I think there's got to be more to it. The biggest question that I have for you, and once again, you were part of putting this together. You know, you and I are chatting here, and the world knows this stuff. I mean, between the American Heart Association, people who are trying to prevent strokes, obesity, diabetes, I mean, people are going to have an A1C, you know, of 12, and you're going to tell me that they're not aware that at some point they're going to end up losing their toes, or, you know, they're going to end up having a big problem with their sugar, with sugar levels through the roof. You know, people know this. Why don't they exercise? Okay, or why do they have to get into a position where they're like half dead, and then they said, "Uh-oh, I need to start walking." What is wrong with this? I don't get it. How do you see that?
There is an explanation for this, and let's start with the obvious thing. If we take anybody, and I literally mean anybody, and we logically present the argument for fitness and exercise, we're never going to get a no, and we're never going to get any pushback. Logically, we all understand the assignment. We all know we should be doing more in terms of our fitness. We all know we should be watching our nutrition and getting a little bit more sleep and socializing a little bit more. All those things which actually make us healthy inside and out. Exercise in itself is a stressor. And as I mentioned earlier with the hunter-gatherer society, which anthropologists follow in a field study, and basically a field study from an anthropological point of view is somebody becomes embedded with them for a number of weeks and becomes a member of their troop. And what he saw there is that although they're incredibly fit, from our perspective, they're not particularly muscle, because that's energetically costly and you can't guarantee always having abundant energy in the wild. And they're geared towards doing nothing for set periods of time during the day. And that's how the body conserves energy for survival. Which means that when it comes to us, we still have those same mechanisms in our head. If I tell you, hey, you know, how about going down to the gym, you and I, you know, killing it for an hour. You've been training all your life, as I have. And if we're really 100% honest, we'll say, yeah, let's do it. But the very back of our mind, there's a tiny little bit of resistance. Why? Because we know it's going to be physically hard. We know we're going to sweat. If we go flat out, we're going to be sore the next day. And if I haven't trained with you before and you with me, there's also the question of, you know, how good are you? Are you going to make me look bad? You know, all the stupid things which come into our brain. So those things are going to basically become a negative block, which we have to overcome. And the only way we would overcome them is if you and I had an emotional attachment to what we do, which is perhaps linked to our identity, but also definitely linked to our particular circumstances, which allows us to overcome that natural obstacle we feel. Now, I've been training since 13. I'm 60 now, so it's like 47 years of training. Like you, have a home gym. I finish my day or have a schedule my exercise. And every time I finish and I want to go, there's this thing where, I have work to do because work never stops. I have emails to reply to because emails never stop. And there's that voice which says, how about we don't do it today? Do it tomorrow. Go twice as hard tomorrow. How about we, today it's been a tiring day. I'm exhausted. I don't want to go. And I have to convince myself to say, don't be stupid. You've heard this voice all your life. Go for 10 minutes. And that changes everything. So that voice, that obstacle, which comes from inside, and it's there basically from an evolutionary point of view to stop us from wasting energy, which doesn't need to be wasted.
Right.
So we can survive.
Right.
So it's there to protect us, but we don't need protection anymore. But it's still there as a mechanism.
Yeah. Right. That's a great way to explain it, because I will tell you, and I can tell you, I'm a big baseball fan, and if I don't, uh, if I'm watching a game, the last thing on my mind is, you know what, I got to do something. I got to go out for my walk, or I got to maybe just do some deadlifts, or do the rope or something. But what I do, that's where the micro workouts have saved me. I
Yes.
just say to myself, you know what? Go down and do 500 revolutions on the rope. It'll take
Yes.
you 3 minutes.
Yes.
Or, get on the treadmill down there for 10 minutes. I scale it. See, I have to scale stuff anyway because I'm 70 years old. I can't do, everything that I used to do when I was, like maybe 50 or maybe even your age. But the bottom line is I do it. I
Yep.
get out and I go do it, but it's not about me thinking I have to conserve energy. It's me thinking that I want to do something else. Like you want to,
Yes.
maybe you got to answer emails or something like that. I want to do something that's entertaining. And I got news for you. If the New York Mets are on, okay, they're gonna. That's priority. I have to watch it. That's a great explanation. Fabulous
Great.
explanation.
And I was going to say, and I'm glad you shared how you get past it, because I'm going to give you the science behind that now. We know, and again, this is an evolutionary mechanism. It's been very recently discovered how it works. That if the muscles start working within a 10-minute period, they produce a particular type of neurotransmitter that allows us to keep on moving. So if we manage to move our bodies despite this initial reluctance to do so, then we're inclined to keep on going. And again, the reason for that is, if you're running for your life, what's going to happen? You're going to get tired. So, you're going to say, oh, I'm too tired, I'm going to stop. And you're going to die. And the brain doesn't want that to happen to your body.
Right.
So essentially, once the muscles start moving, they produce a neurotransmitter that allows dopamine levels to rise in the brain. The reward system kicks forward, and suddenly you want to keep on going. And that's how I get past my block. I tell myself I'm going to go for 10 minutes. Worst case scenario, I'm going to stop on the 10-minute marker on the dot. But what happens within 10 minutes? Well, I'm warmed up. I'm feeling good. I sort of tend to work out for an hour. And that's how I get past it. Your micro workouts do exactly that. They get your body moving. Then your muscles tell your brain, you need to keep on moving. And then you get into it and you feel good. So there you go.
Yeah. And it's great. It really, what I do, I have a weighted vest, 30 pounds, and I
Right.
wear it when I have worn it. I wear it out for sure, but I wear it on the treadmill, and I
Right.
say to myself, I'm going to do 10 minutes with this on, 3 miles an hour at a 10% incline. That's what I'm going to do. It's a high intensity workout. So I'm going to do 10 minutes. That's all I want to do. So what happens is I end up taking the vest off, okay, after the 10 minutes, and just continuing to walk. Just continuing to walk. And, it's like, all right, it was no biggie. I was able to do it. There we go. We got this out of the way. But I never see it. See, I think my issue, and I'm going to have you back on the show. We're going to do part 2 of this thing.
Brilliant.
Because I'm just having too much fun right now. My
Me too.
my issue is I never want to see it as I have to work out. I don't want to see it that way. The way I want to see it is, it's part of my life. It's not like I have to, it's not like I have to work out. I don't have to do anything, but this is a piece of my life that I believe is important enough that I have to give it attention every day. It's like giving attention to your kids or giving attention to your wife. You pay attention to yourself, and as you pay attention to yourself, you take better care of yourself. Self-care is not selfish.
Yes.
And it's something that we all have to do. It's when we lose sight of our own health. We believe that we can get away with smoking or drinking too much or no exercise or overeating, and we can get away with it. You'll get away with it for a while, but you're going to end up with an untimely death. And that's something that a lot of people, don't think is ever going to happen. People who absolutely, okay, they are living an unhealthy lifestyle. They go to the doctor, and the doctor says, I want to let you know something. You got a spot on your liver, and they panic like, oh my God, how could this happen? Well, look at how you've been living for the last 20 years, and you have to be aware of certain things. And I may even want to give you a phone call as we talk more about this, because I really feel this spirit toward you, because I think we're both doing something very similar. I got to ask you one more question.
Yeah, sure.
Before we end this interview, and that is, I don't even know why I'm asking this. It's here as part of it, but how can we make fitness? I think I want to make people more aware of fitness, but how can we make it easier for people? How can that happen? So people say, no big deal. Fitness was easy. How do we do that?
Well, it starts by identifying and then working to remove all the perceptual threshold barriers. Right? Your example of using micro workouts because you feel that sort of disinclination to exercise every time that you think about exercise seriously is a great example. The fact that you have a home gym, for instance, makes it easy, right? If you had to get dressed, get in your car, drive to the gym, get undressed, get redressed, and go to the gym, do the stuff that you want, then repeat the procedure and come back. Now, all these steps, which appear fine to us on a nice summer day, on a day when it's raining or snowing outside, the wind is howling and the house is cozy, they become huge obstacles. And we'll never admit to ourselves, well, I'm not going out because it's cold. Because we know how that sounds. We're going to say, I'm really tired. Next time I go to the gym, I'm going to do 3 hours. We say that. We never do. And even if we do, it wouldn't be the same intensity. It's not the same effect. We'll say, I've got to be fresh at work tomorrow. You're going to sleep. You're going to wake up fresh anyway. So you're lying to yourself. And we're very good at lying to ourselves.
Yes.
So we need to basically put in our identify the obstacles. What are they? Is it distance? Is it access to gym? Is it equipment? Is it clothes? Is it friends? Whatever it is. And then work to change it. Some people say, well, I haven't got a home gym. I can't afford one. I haven't got any space. Well, you don't need any space. If you're going to do squats and push-ups, you do it in your underwear, barefoot, in a 2x2 space. So that will help you. But for that to happen, we first need to understand the obstacles, understand what it is that's stopping us, and then put in place a strategy that will help us. And then the final linking element to all this is making it an integral part of who we are. You mentioned that it's who you are. It's become part of your identity. You see yourself as that person who exercises. So to not exercise, in a sense, betrays who you are, and that feels bad.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, I'm a good father. If somebody tells themselves I'm a good father, these are just words. But what does that do inside your head? You want to shout at somebody because they did something which you didn't agree with, it's your son or your daughter, and you don't. Why? Because you have this image of a good father. It's the same thing. You tied that behavioral state into your identity, and that then allows you to behave differently when the situation is tight. We need to do the same thing with exercise. You gotta say, well, I don't want to exercise. Fine. None of us do. Do you understand it's great? Yes. Why? Not because we're going to look in a particular way. That's a side effect of exercise. But because we're going to feel in a particular way. Do you want to feel helpless in your own body? Do you feel incapable of running around with your grandkids? Do you want to not necessarily live a long life, but live a life where you feel good every single day, as opposed to having, months and years where you're struggling with your health, you're waking up every day, the joy is gone out of life. Nobody wants that.
No.
And the moment we feel that, then our inclination to exercise becomes easier. And the moment we change how we see exercise, it's not going to be torture. It's not going to be for hours. It doesn't have to have all these fancy things around it. I'm just going to move my body, feel good inside myself, feel good about myself, be better every day in who I am. And if we link those things up, then all the obstacles begin to sort of fall by the wayside.
Dave, I could spend all day with you. I truly mean that.
Likewise, your journey's been amazing. So
I my adrenaline flows just speaking with you because it's just that spirit. I feel it between the two of us, and plus we got the same color shirt on, so
yeah, it's very practical.
I am going to have you back on. We'll
I'd love to come back on.
I want you back on, and we'll schedule another one of these. But as we are right now, I'm going to we'll end the interview. I'll do an outro. Okay. I'll stop the recording. We can chat for a few minutes after that. Okay.
Okay. Brilliant.
Well, folks, there's Dave Amerland. It was just a thrill speaking with him. I can't wait to have him back on. Once again, you were listening to the Be Simply Fit podcast. We break down health and fitness into sustainable steps. This is what Dave was talking about. Okay, my name is Jim Burns. I hope that I was able to give you some insight. I know Dave did. He gave me a lot of insight. Okay, and I want us all to remember we don't have to be overwhelmed with exercise as an event. It's not an event. It's a lifestyle. Now, we're going to dive a little deeper and give you some more advice during the next episode of the Be Simply Fit podcast. Don't miss it. See you soon.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.